Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to It Takes Two. We have another scenario. We have another letter that I'd like to read out and get some feedback from yourselves. Dear It Takes Two, I've been married for a couple of months now. Although parts of my marriage are good, intimately there is an issue. My husband has unusual tendencies. They are almost perverted to some extent. The intimate acts which he prefers are not things women should partake in. I think there may be something wrong with him. We have to use our, I guess, a level of imagination. It's from an anonymous writer.
Well, look, I think when I'm hearing this,
what springs to mind, Sheikh?
Two things come to mind. One, in terms of his preferences, put it this way. Are these preferences not seen as perverted, okay, but from an Islamic point of view are not? That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? On another level, that they are as such, okay, especially from the point of view of Islam, you know. I don't want to sort of like speculate, but I think these are one of the two things. So I think the first thing that person should know, okay, is how are these things objectively classified and not subjectively classified?
Right.
Maybe from her own particular subjective or cultural point of view, okay, it might be something that is considered to be perverted, okay, but from an Islamic point of view, it is not. Right, and so that has to be established. If it is established that it is perverted from an Islamic point of view, okay, then she should speak to that husband from an Islamic point of view, say, look, what you're doing is going against the commands of God. It's a sin, and I would not participate in that. Okay.
What about on the contrary, though? What about on the opposite side? Because sometimes issues arise not necessarily between halal and haram, but for Muslims, issues arise when it's between halal and halal. So maybe, you know, sometimes, not suggesting this particular sister, but saying in general that sometimes women can be a bit frigid or a bit inhibited sexually.
May I interject there?
Of course, sister.
Being a woman, I think, again, many different types of women. But we don't know where this woman culturally is from. Maybe in some cultures, say if you're an Indonesian, you're encouraged to be more frigid and more reserved. It's a sign of honor. It's a sign of being modest, and you're encouraged to carry that, even Islamically, through your marriage. So you keep that pretense up, for example. And maybe what she's referring to frigid, as you said, isn't actually frigid. It might be something halal, but it's been drummed in her head so much that she's feeling this is a bit outlandish for me. So that is a different issue. I think if you feel uncomfortable doing anything, then obviously you need to, get to know yourself a bit better, ask yourself some questions, do your research. You're in a marriage, and Islamically, Sheikh, it does say that I think both spouses are meant to be pleasing to one another. On the flip side, you may have a woman who's been raised in the West, who is aware that everywhere she goes there's a billboard which has some kind of suggestion to it. This is how you need to be if you drink a can of Coke. This is how you should look if you're driving your car, for example. Very suggestive. So then, you may be with, say, a brother who, has lived in the West or has had certain experiences or come into Islam, who now wants you to be the girl in the billboard, who's advertising a Coke. This is how you should look. And maybe his expectations are not realistic, like we discussed in the previous program.
What's wrong with being, for her husband, what's wrong with being the girl in the billboard? In terms of Islamically, her duties as a wife. Should she not be the girl in the billboard for her husband Islamically?
Maybe she's not comfortable with that side of herself yet. Is she a newlywed? Maybe she doesn't
She
have
is, 'cause they
that.
were 2
She's a
months
newlywed.
married.
Okay, so you have that adjustment time where you're learning about each other, what feels comfortable, what doesn't. And maybe she's not confident. Maybe nobody's had this discussion with her. I
I
mean,
think the hidden hand of porn is in there as well.
Why say
Right?
you, Shay?
We're
Why
talking
say
about
you?
a man. This is a Western context,
Yeah,
all right?
believe
And
so.
if a woman
believe
is saying that, for example, my husband or my spouse wants unusual sexual requests from me, where did he get that from?
well, what
Well, you
is
say
unusual?
what is unusual because we could
yes,
ask
yes,
like
I stand up.
in a Muslim society,
Okay.
every not Muslim society, as Muslims to view X, Y, and Z is forbidden, to listen to X, Y, and Z is forbidden. So then
Yes.
how do Muslims actually gain
Absolutely.
an idea of
This
what
is why I said at the beginning.
in terms of intimacy?
This
what
is
what
why I said
you
at the beginning, and our society has a problem with this. Our society is
in the
Muslim society,
okay,
right? Are very, very inhibited with respect to the discussion and teaching people about proper sexual etiquette or proper sexual behavior. Okay, we do not talk about it. Okay, and so people exist in a vacuum.
And it creates problems,
and it creates
both
problems.
sides.
You know, that vacuum is filled with stuff, okay, that they get from the media, for example. All right? I think the first thing that person needs to know, okay, is if her husband's expectations, okay, are in conformity with Islamic etiquette or not. And Islamic etiquette with respect to sexual relationships is quite vast. It's not restricted or narrow, okay?
As people may imagine,
As people
commonly
might
imagine.
imagine,
Yeah.
right? It's quite flexible, okay? We do have our boundaries. We do have our standards, okay? So for example, he might want some kind of voyeuristic type of behavior, okay? This is outside of Islam. This is against Islam, okay? You know, but other things might not. You see, they need to first of all know where to put this within an Islamic context. It's very important because that now leads to a kind of non-subjective type of discussion. Look, I'm not doing this. You shouldn't want this from me. You shouldn't talk to me about this because from an Islamic point of view, you know, it is not halal.
So,
all right?
so what about from the husband's point of view, though? If he discovers or they discover that this practice is halal or certain practices are halal, does he have a right as a husband to say, you need to loosen up, you need, sweetheart, you need to lighten up?
I wouldn't call it a right, okay? But I would say this, that
Not a demand, but a right to even request.
Yeah, well, there's a right to request, right? But what they need, okay, is to be able to sort of adjust, okay? You know, in terms of he might want a particular type of behavior, all right, that she is not comfortable with, all right? So they work upon that. You know, she should be saying to herself, okay, I'll try to accommodate this, all right? You know, but this is going to take a little time. This is quite fine.
See,
I
can hear this is a trumpet
I'm
at the bit.
feeling as a woman, again, I'm feeling quite vulnerable, and I'm feeling that again.
Vulnerable for her.
I feel vulnerable, not for myself, for her.
Yes.
But I feel that again, the onus is on me to educate myself. I'm thinking what we need is dialogue. We need discussions with our youths. We need open discussions about what males expect from females, what females expect from males. Not their granddads doing it, but young people and people who are a little bit older than them. Because what is lacking is education from both sides. In America, where I lived, you know, before a girl got married, we would pair them up with someone who was a bit older than her, that she had some affinity to, where they could have discussions like, this is what to expect on your wedding night. I don't know what you've been watching, Gone with the Wind or whatever, where he's going to come in with a horse and you're going to be, oh, that's brilliant. This is what to expect. You might find this uncomfortable. It did, because we had a lot of sisters who didn't know what the dickens was going to happen, and what they expected isn't what happened. And then you'd have males who look so upset, as if, you know, someone had died the day after, and they're like, well, sorry, we've been waiting all this time to get married, you know, enjoy half our deen, whatever, and it's rubbish. And it's like, well, it's education on both sides. And as you said, Sheikh, that you need time. But as a female, when I hear that, I feel like, oh my God, that you're already expecting a lot from me. You don't really know my circumstance where I've grown up from, what my ideas are. And already I'm meant to be some kind of cheerleader with the pom-poms and a baton twirling. And it's the way you approach it with a female that's very important. I think a lot of males need to be considerate, and again, the way they approach the female, because what he
women need to be considerate. Because
women do need to be considerate.
Men have requirements and women have requirements in terms of sensitivity and communication.
If I'm not the type of person to do something, just because you've got married and you think, oh, now I've got married, all my needs can be met. Maybe it's not in my capacity or remit to be everything that you want me to. And that causes pressure. I'm going to try, maybe in other ways, but maybe I don't feel comfortable doing those things.
Is that okay if we change the genders, if we swap it around for the spouse? So it was a gentleman, a brother that had written and said, you know...
No, it's not okay.
No. Or is it, yeah, well, is it okay if we swap it around?
I think we need to be real.
It's the same thing.
It's the
same thing, right? Look, people do not come into a relationship, a marital relationship, as a blank slate. They don't.
Well, some people do.
Well,
people do.
They're probably living in a blank environment.
Some people are very
must have been blank slate is in terms of ideas. You're going to get ideas of whatever.
They have ideas of sex. What kind of sex is best for them, for example. They have ideas about this. They have ideas of what is the best spouse. They have ideas about what the ideal spouse is wearing. They have ideas about how I relate to my spouse. They have all these ideas. They have ideas about when I come home, how my spouse will be to me. Exactly. They have ideas. People have ideas.
Yes.
All right? And when it comes to, for example, this is clearly about sexual behavior. Right? When it comes to sexual behavior, you have a whole lot of people, okay, who are quite, outside the box in some areas, and who are quite inhibited in other areas. You know what I mean? And it's two people coming into a relationship. And sometimes these inhibitions or exhibitions, sometimes might not be in the same area. They mightn't be in sync. Mm-hmm. All right? What we need to let our young people know, and also married people, okay, is this is natural. And that basically what you have to do is to try to get in sync, right? And one of the most important criteria for being in sync is being clear about what is halal and what is haram, what is right and what is wrong, okay? Once you put all the wrong things aside, okay, then, you say, okay, let's work upon the right things. I mean, I might not be oriented or inclined to what you would like in situation X, right? But let's talk about situation X and find some kind of compromise. You see?
Where would you I think that's how things work. That seems like for many would be an uncomfortable discussion to have. I mean, you wouldn't go to your manager or your local Islamic centre. I would think as a woman you'd feel uncomfortable going to a man. And
I'm not talking about going to anybody. I'm talking
about once you clarify what's legal.
Yeah. What is right and what is wrong. And you can read about this. Yeah. You don't have to go to a marriage to find out. You can read about it.
What if you're from different viewpoints?
Exactly. The different viewpoints have to do with you being in sync. Your viewpoint is based upon what you've been taught, what you've heard, whatever. What I'm saying is, issue A, all right, is a point of contention. We realize that issue A in itself is not haram. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's just simply, I don't like issue A. I'm averse to issue A. Mm-hmm. My spouse wants issue A. Mm-hmm. All right? I'm aware of this. Okay? We have a point where we can talk about it. Right? We have a point where you can say, okay, my spouse, if this is extremely important to you, all right, I will try to accommodate you.
See, I already feel pressure when you say that, because most of the time in relationships, let's just face it, that a lot of the time the female has the capacity to be more accommodating and wants to please, especially if it's half of your deen. And what you were saying to me is, let's have a discussion and see if I can come round to that kind of idea that you want. That sounds like it's some pressure.
No.
Well, I have to disagree with that. I have to disagree.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I have to.
No, please.
I think I'm going to question where Muslim sisters are getting their ideas about in terms of subject of this matter, in terms of intimacy, because there's information that we get from the Islamic narratives about purity and nobility,
Yeah.
and I think that somewhere along the lines there's a kind of a misreading or a misinterpretation of what it means to be pure or to be of good character. So people take that into their marriage and are kind of frigid, because and Islam is not saying that these things are forbidden.
This is true, but maybe did she state that she was 2 months into her
Yeah,
marriage?
yeah.
Maybe she's thinking if she lets everything out the closet, he's going to think, what the dickens have you been up to? Where is this little meek mouse that I've got to?
We don't get an impression here. She is actually concerned and disturbed by his
unusual tendencies, as she
proclivities.
I think what she's saying is she doesn't know where to go for a reference. That's what she's trying to say. So how does she know that this is unusual? How does she decipher it? Maybe it's a cultural thing for her.
Yeah, this is the point I made, right? It can be quite subjective, and she needs to have an objective approach to it first, which is first of all to distinguish between the halal and the haram in the relationship. But the point I'd like to make here also is this. In terms of, intimate demands, for example, all right, as long as they are halal, if it's coming from the husband, okay, from an Islamic point of view, the onus is upon the woman to accommodate that, okay? Unfortunately, I don't sound as, politically correct.
Some people say, who made that fatwa?
For example, in the Holy Quran, Allah says, approach your wives in whichever way you like. For example, you have many hadith that talk about, if the husband requires intimate relationships, and sometimes in the most unusual circumstances. For example, while baking bread or while riding the back of a camel, or for example. It's not that you should do it like that. You know what I'm saying? But it shows you that the onus is upon the wife making herself available to the husband, okay? In whichever way he wants, barring the fact that, for example, let's say there might be some kind of physical illness involved or something, whatever, okay? The onus is on that. There's no doubt about that, okay? Does this remove the need for communication? It does not, all right? But it does have a bottom line.
And
really.
Understanding, I would hope.
And understanding,
as well.
yes.
This
is why I say.
For example, going back to the lady's situation, she's a newlywed. She may have limited experience. I would hope the brother would be patient enough to understand her current limitations and be willing to work with that. I wouldn't want him to quote what the sheikh said and expect a triple somersault.
Thank you very much.
Gymnastics when she's new to the situation. So I'll be hoping that the brother is of sound mind to be able to decipher when to say what and when to act upon what. And I think people need to be patient, but people also need to understand that how male and female see things can be two different things.
I too hope that the brother would be patient, and I hope that maybe the sister would be willing to grow with the brother if it is something that is something permissible and may enhance their marriage. I think
that's something that again the community needs to stress, that our daughters, our girls, or whoever, we need to encourage them that when they're in a marital situation that is a halal place where they can express themselves, and there's no shame in expressing yourself. This is a blessing from Allah. I think there needs to be education on both sides, and you don't have to let your mum know what you're doing or your friends know what you're doing. Some people do. It's a cultural thing, they want to know what you've done, but it's okay. I think again, could be a self-esteem thing. You need to have confidence in yourself. Maybe you haven't had any good role models in a marriage. Everyone's so, as you said, frigid and, robotic that you think, oh, that's how I need to be. I don't dare give off the scent that maybe we like to hold hands.
What do you think about that, Shay?
What's that?
About the robotic nature sometimes, or unrealistic modeling in Muslim communities? Is it unrealistic, the expectations that are put out there?
I think it's partly both, right? It's partly both. I think there are Muslim individuals who have a very warped understanding of relationships, okay? There's a whole lot of abuse in the Muslim community, for example, right? A whole lot of oppression of women, especially. That does exist, right? But there's also in some communities and individuals a great deal of tenderness and intimacy and love and compassion, you know, and so on, and excitement. You know, there are some relationships like that. So I think it all depends upon the environment in which you are, the social environment in which you are, the family environment. You know, to what extent people, like in this girl, for example, to what extent they know about the difference between halal and haram in terms of intimate expectations. All right. For example, the sister mentioned holding hands. Right. Some people have a problem with that, even though it's not a problem holding hands. Right. There might be a problem about holding hands in particular environments, okay, but holding hands in itself is not a problem, you see.
I wanted to ask, Islamically, do we have a notion of being forced to be intimate? So rape, for example, because you can be married and not want to be physical.
Rape is a crime from an Islamic point of view. Rape in a marriage, that exists, okay. Islam does not encourage. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, never ever encouraged a man to approach his wife without her participation, without her, her involvement. You know what I mean? For example, there's a hadith where he says, you know, don't approach your wife like an animal, okay? Play with her first, for example, you know. So therefore, there is this idea of rape in a personal relationship. However, from Islamic law, from an Islamically legal point of view, it will be very, very difficult to prove, you know, because just like, for example, rape in the non-marital sense of the word requires something like 4 witnesses to the act and so forth, it becomes quite problematic.
What I wanted to ask from a brother's point of view is this term frigid that you brought up a lot, is that what brothers are finding?
But Bilal brought it up.
That was my word. I'm going to own the word.
Is that how brothers see practicing Muslim women? Generally, that we're, you know, because we're trying to practice our faith and be pleasing to Allah, that we come across as being frigid?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think a practicing Muslim man would find a practicing Muslim woman very attractive. It's a very important component in being attractive to that woman. A practicing Muslim man will not find a non-hijabi, for example, as attractive as a hijabi. You know, if all things are given, of course. You know, all things being equal.
Well, I have to completely disagree with you there, because
I still haven't answered the frigid. It was my
please
word.
go ahead, go on. Your word, you own it.
Yes, no, I was going to say, in my experience, talking to some of the younger brothers who are, you know, approaching marriage or are willing to discuss issues of that nature, and there is a, let's say, I wouldn't say that's the common view on the street, but that there is a critical mass of young men who feel that way. I wouldn't even say think that way, feel that way.
Where is that coming from? Is it some people have actually found that, or is it the image that women are giving across that they
maybe
they walk on water?
Some speak from their experiences as like very young divorcees, or, you know, but young. We're talking about young brothers.
So I think what we're finding is there needs to be education on both sides. But if I could just go back to the Sheikh's comment, being a hijabi woman myself, the comment that you made that a lot, not to quote you directly, but a lot of Muslim men find hijabi women more
attractive. Not Muslim men.
What did you say?
Pious Muslim men.
Find hijabi.
Would find a hijabi woman, all things being equal, right?
That's qualified it though. All
Yes,
things being
all
equal.
all things being
But
equal,
on the
would find a
street-
hijabi woman much more attractive than a non-hijabi woman.
But evidence on the street shows otherwise. And for
Please
pious
explain.
Muslims- well, I'm sorry. I think a lot of the time, who we portray we are and who we actually are don't marry up, especially when it comes to brothers. I think when it comes to brothers, the pious brothers, the first thing they'll look at is maybe a revert sister who's had some experience in the past, as opposed to a sister who's been, raised in an Islamic household, because he may be concerned that, as you said, she may be a bit frigid, for example. So as sisters, we come across this a lot when it comes to beauty, aesthetically pleasing person. They've had their fun before, and then now when it comes time to get married, they want the pious.
Why, if it's not more attractive?
Because they've had their cake and they want to eat their cake now. They've had their cake and now they want to eat it.
I would have interpreted it as the non-hijabi, as maybe that would be deemed by brothers as, okay, that was superficial attraction, but like on a deeper,
But
more
that's not okay,
spiritual
because
level.
why should I be waiting around trying to please Allah while you go and have your fun, and then alhamdulillah, when the revelations come to you, you want the pious sister? How is that
Well, I mean,
fair?
that's what we're going off.
Going into that is going to be going into all kinds of details. I think that it wouldn't end. Okay, let's put all these details aside and ask the question: who is attracted to a hijabi sister?
Right.
Who
That
is
is
finding
Right.
a hijabi
Yeah.
sister attractive? All right, and it would be a Muslim who attaches a great deal of importance to hijab. That hijab brings out a certain aspect of a woman that he likes. You see? And I think this is enough. Whether he was active before, he wasn't active before, you know what I mean? I think
very
it's
practicing,
the
little
same-
practicing. It's still
the same
true.
reality.
It's still true. Yeah.
Okay, I really want to say something. If that is the case, then why do we have so many males in our community who have mutas? They have the chador wearing wife, may Allah bless her, that's wonderful. And then they have other partners that look differently.
Yeah, you see the
I don't know about these
the
statistics.
possible reasons.
I don't know about these statistics.
Right? The possible reasons could be astronomical. You know what I'm saying? To say that, for example, a male is going to have a most likely with, for example, a non-hijabi person.
That was an
okay?
automatic inference from what you said. Well, you have a Shadorian wife and a mutter.
You see, there are all kinds of possibilities that lead to this. You see what I'm saying? I'm not talking about that type of a person. I'm talking about a person who genuinely finds a hijabi woman attractive, right? And would marry such a woman, okay? Because that aspect of herself is something that's important. Why? You know why? Because look, I think what attracts people to people are not just physical, okay? Not physical, but also in terms of values, also in terms of what that person stands for, right? So for example, in the non-Muslim community, all right, the average man might find, let's say, a prostitute, okay? A beautiful looking prostitute to be beautiful, right? But will never marry somebody like that.
But there's a contradiction.
That was my initial
that
point.
contradiction in our community. That's the issue. The wife would be a pious-looking person, and then they'll have other relationships which will be completely different to what the wife looks like or acts like. And this is a reality. Let's
Sister
not
Ruby,
pretend it doesn't happen.
No, but sister, you actually asked something which the nature of your question is interesting. In the sense you said he'll have a chador wearing wife and then he'll have a mutter, as if to, why can't can he not mutter somebody that wears a chador? Well, it would seem as mutually exclusive.
Definitely. But what I'm saying, when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about physical needs, they're not necessarily going for that one type of person. I think most men, if you're really honest with yourself, you don't have one type of person that you're interested in. You're looking for the physical. With women, we have to have a condensed version of everything in one person. With males, especially Muslim males, you can go for the religious woman, the mother, the the catwalk model, because you have those options open to you. And I think to kind of not acknowledge those things is not really right. And as a woman, going back to this sister's letter, she's probably feeling like, whoa, his actions are a bit out there. And she's probably thinking, goodness me, if I don't step up, what's he going to do? And a lot of women have that insecurity.
But maybe there's a clue of sort in there that maybe the sisters need to be, discover what is halal and, discover what works with them and their spouse.
Then you have the argument of how much do you give? The Sheikh said that, it's incumbent upon a woman to be pleasing to her husband. But what if that's not in your capacity? What if there are some things you cannot do? It's just not in your nature.
This is where communication comes in. This is where patience comes in, and so forth. Right?
To negotiate? Could you say communication? Because you can communicate yourself, but you have to negotiate.
I just said you can use that word negotiate, right? And all relationships, all marital relationships must have that component. The weaker that component, the worse the marriage. That's how it rolls. You know what I mean? We might not be able to give everything our spouse needs. Okay? We have to recognize this on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to prioritize. What is most important for you? Right?
Yes.
And that spouse needs to know what is most important for you. It mightn't be important at all for them, right? But once you know that this is the most important for that person, and if they don't get it, our relationship is over, okay? Then I have to try my best to give that, especially if it is not haram, okay? And if it is within my capacity. If it is not within my capacity, then I really think that we could either accept that we can't have this, or we might have to accept that we have to separate our ways.
Or there's other options. There may be other options available.
Maybe we'll have a chance to
I like that word,
in
capacity.
some detail. Maybe we can explore that in maybe in another show, Sheikh. You have to come back. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. But it's been a pleasure. So thank you for participating, and Sister Ruby, as always, thank you for your fiery participation.
Dear.
And thank you for staying with us for the duration of It Takes Two. Until next week, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need some relationship advice? Do you have marital problems or questions? Perhaps you want to get married and you have questions for us. Please send your thoughts or questions to ItTakes2@sophiatv.com.